At 40,000 feet, where the sun turns the cockpit glass into liquid gold, supremacy is not claimed by strength alone. It is earned by precision. And in that narrow space between survival and dominance stands a machine known simply as Air Superiority Fighters, engineered not merely to fly, but to rule the sky itself. Their story begins in the late decades of the Cold War, at a time when nations confronted a new and unsettling truth. Future battles would be decided long before pilots saw each other with their own eyes. Radar, missiles, stealth, and speed would define who lived and who didn't. Western analysts watched as adversaries developed highly maneuverable interceptors and long-range missile platforms. The requirement became urgent. Create a fighter that could detect enemies first. Fire first, maneuver harder, and survive in an environment where a single mistake meant annihilation. Thus emerged the Air Superiority Doctrine Fighters, built with one mission only: to control the skies so everything beneath them could live another day. The resulting aircraft embodied decades of engineering ambition. Their airframes were shaped by wind tunnel physics and battlefield necessity. Long, narrow noses for radar arrays, wide, blended fuselages for lift, twin vertical stabilizers to maintain control at extreme angles of attack. Beneath their skin, carbon fiber composites and titanium alloys formed a lightweight but resilient skeleton materials chosen to withstand heat, pressure, and the violent G-forces of close-in dogfighting. But what set these fighters apart was their ability to vanish. Faceted surfaces, radar-absorbent coatings, serrated edges around engine inlets, and internal weapons bays created a ghost-like signature. In a world where detection equals death, stealth was not a luxury. It was life support. Their avionics systems represented a revolution of their own. AESA radars swept the sky with hundreds of electronically steered beams, mapping threats with breathtaking speed. Helmet-mounted displays fused targeting cues directly into the pilot's field of view, turning a glance into a weapon. Multispectral senses allowed fighters to see through clouds, darkness, and hostile jamming. Data links connected them to satellites, AWACS, aircraft, and other fighters, transforming them from lone predators into a synchronized pack. However, none of this would matter without the raw power to reach the fight first. Air Superiority Fighters were designed around engines that redefined thrust. Pratt and Whitney's F-119, and later the F-135, Saturn's AL-41F1, and Rolls-Royce EJ200 engines delivered pounds of thrust numbers once thought impossible. Many fighters could supercruise sustain supersonic flight without afterburners at speeds around Mach 1.3 with afterburners lit. They leaped past Mach 2 with ease. Their climb rates exceeded 50,000 feet per minute. Their service ceilings stretched toward the edge of breathable atmosphere above 60,000 feet. Each engine was a controlled explosion of precision engineering, allowing these jets to sprint, climb, and turn with a ferocity that rewrote aerial combat. Armament was never an afterthought. In fact, Air Superiority Fighters were built around their weapons. Internally carried AIM-120 DNR-77M missiles offered long-range engagement capability, while high-off-bore-side weapons like the AIM-9X or IRIS-T allowed pilots to fire at enemies far outside traditional aiming angles. Some aircraft carried a short-barrel 20mm or 30mm cannon, echo of an older era, but still a tool of last resort. Targeting pods, electronic countermeasures, and towed decoys turned them into moving fortresses of electronic warfare. Their radars could illuminate multiple targets at once. Their countermeasure suites could blind enemy sensors or mislead incoming missiles. For a pilot inside, the aircraft felt less like a machine and more like a living organism, one that listened, sensed, and warned with an intelligence of its own. The performance of Air Superiority Fighters in training and conflict built their legend. In multinational exercises, they often achieved kill ratios exceeding 20-to-1. Their ability to remain undetected, strike quickly, and withdraw unharmed shocked even seasoned tactics. Real-world operations, though, often classified revealed the same pattern. Hostile aircraft driven back before they ever knew they were targeted. Pilots reported surreal moments where they engaged enemies who never saw them on radar. It felt like fighting shadows, one aviator said. Only we weren't the shadows they were. Tactically, these fighters relied on a doctrine of dominance known as first look, first shot, first kill. They used altitude for advantage. sweeping down from high above. They approached hostile airspace at oblique angles, minimizing their radar cross-section. They fought in coordinated formations, sharing data to overwhelm opponents. In close-in engagements, thrust vectoring engines allowed them to perform tight post-stall, maneuvers impossible arcs of motion that defied aerodynamics as most pilots knew it. To master these jets, pilots trained not only to fly them, but to think like them. They learned to manage an ocean of information while executing maneuvers that pushed the limits of human endurance. When compared against their rivals, the distinctions became clear. The American F-22 Raptor, with unmatched stealth and supercruise, remains the gold standard in air dominance. Russia's Su-57 brings high agility and powerful infrared sensors but struggles with true low observable performance. China's J-20 boasts long-range engagement capability and advanced avionics, though questions remain about its close-in maneuverability. No single aircraft is perfect, but Air Superiority Fighters were never about perfection. They were about superiority where it matters most: awareness, first engagement, and sustained control of the air. Today, Air Superiority Fighters remain the crown jewels of the air forces that operate them. Nations continue to upgrade their radars, engines, and stealth materials. Sixth-generation successes are already being conceived: aircraft that will partner with autonomous drones, fire directed energy weapons, and merge pilot intuition with artificial intelligence. Yet, even as the future approaches, the role of the fighter pilot remains timeless. Because these jets symbolize something more than technology, they represent the thin line between conflict and safety. They embody the will of nations to protect their skies, their people, and their peace. And in the quiet space above the clouds where sunlight meets steel and the world below looks impossibly small, Air Superiority Fighters remind us of a truth that has endured since the first human took to the air. Whoever owns the sky owns tomorrow.